Good evening, friends, and welcome to Sleepytime Tales, a podcast aimed at helping you to get a good night's sleep. Do you find your mind plagued with the stresses of modern life, especially when the lights are out and you're trying to get a restful night? Does your spinning mind keep you awake? Follow my voice down the path towards a good night's rest. Listen to me tell a story that will keep your mind from wandering to your daytime problems, the ones that you can't solve right now and will be easier to solve well rested. Listen to my voice and allow yourself to drift, following the twists and turns of the story, but slowly letting go and drifting into sleep. This show is brought to you by supporters on Patreon. Times are tough for everyone, so people who do what they can to help me to keep the show running are very much appreciated. So I want to show some appreciation for two new folks who signed up this week. So I'd like to thank both Kerry and John for their support, helping me to keep the show growing and helping me to start to get to the point where I can look at options to help the show grow. A reminder to all patrons, if you've signed up, to make sure to add your custom RSS feed to your podcast app. If you're not sure what to do, I'll come work you through the process. And also just be warned that you can't add manual feeds to apps like Spotify and iHeartRadio. But it's worth the effort because there are some fun bonuses there. $2, of course, you get your early release of the main episode. And $5 levels, you get bonus episodes, catnap minisodes and special edits. So, of course, if you would like to support Sleepytime Tales and have the means to do so, please take a look at patreon.com/sleepytimetales. The link is in the show notes and also up on the website to see what you can get as a supporter, because, as I mentioned, there are real rewards for everybody from $2 a month. So you get that reward and on top of the satisfaction of knowing that you're helping thousands of insomniacs to get a good night's sleep. Other methods of support the show are also listed in the show notes if monthly contributions are a bit much for you. There's the Patreon, the tip jar, the merchandise store, which includes masks at the moment, and others. Exchange rates mean that even a few dollars go a very long way, so any contribution you can make is much appreciated. Also on the subject of as I mentioned, the tip jar, I don't think I mentioned last week Joan, who contributed through there. Thank you very much for your support, Joan, who also gave me the highest praise, saying that Sleepytime Tales is the best of the sleep podcasts. So that's a great thing to hear. It's a natural impulse to try play down compliments, I think. But today, as I record this, I gave someone the advice half an hour ago to take compliments. So I'm going to accept that. Thank you very much, Joan. Thank you for your support and your kind words. My inboxes were actually quite busy this week because I got some other very kind words from Jermaine on Instagram. She says she's been struggling to sleep lately, but Sleepytime Tales is so effective she's asleep before the story even starts. I consider this a great success. That means that you can listen to the same episode over and over again and get surprised every time. So thank you, Jermaine, and I'm glad this is helpful for you. And besides saying nice things to me and contributing financially, the other major way you can help Sleepytime Tales is to just simply spread the word. If you're finding the show helpful and you know somebody who you think might also find it helpful, just tell them. Recommend it to them and see if you can help them to get a good night's sleep as well. If you do so on social media, please make sure to tag me in so that I know and I can thank you for that. You can tag me at Sleepytime Tales on both Instagram and Twitter. Last but not least, of course, I need to shout out the music. I think it's a very important part of the identity of the show and the sort of sonic design of it and the sort of tranquil feel you get. So that, of course, is Un Desert by Kumiko. The music, I got it off the Free Music Archive, and I've linked their website in the show notes because they've got some very cool stuff that they release under different names that I recommend checking out. And I think that's enough waffling of that, so let's get back. Thank you very much. So what exactly is Sleepy Time Tales? What is it for? It's a bit of a strange idea, isn't it? It's a podcast that you're supposed to fall asleep to. But lack of sleep is a health crisis in the 21st century, and this is a podcast that is intended to help those that it can to get a restful night. Are you one of those people who find yourself lying awake at night with your mind spinning and emotions in turmoil with anxieties of 21st century life? Do you wake up in the middle of the night and find yourself not quite able to doze back off at 3 a.m.? I'm here to help. My name is Dave, and I'm your narrator, here to help you into a restful night. I'm someone who has struggled to sleep ever since I was a baby. My parents had sleepless nights with me for many years, and even once I got old enough not to be a bother to them anymore, it was always a struggle for me. It was fairly recently in the last few years that I discovered the tendency for droning voices, especially male ones, to act almost like a tranquilizer for me. I used to get into bed at night and listen to podcasts because I was inevitably going to be lying awake. And I'd suddenly find myself waking up when the podcast was over and I'd missed everything I was trying to listen to. I started listening to podcasts specifically for that purpose. I worked through backlogs of old gaming shows and stuff like that, things that I was ostensibly interested in for the intention of helping me sleep. It was actually just over about 2 years ago probably that I discovered that there are actually podcasts out there specifically intended for the purpose of helping people sleep. Seemed a bit of a strange idea for me, but I tried one out and it worked very well for me, and I recommended it to other people, but quite often didn't resonate. People didn't like the narrator's voice, or they didn't like the style of story that he was telling. So I thought to myself, I've got this boring, drony voice, so maybe I should do something with it. See if I can reach people that this very successful show couldn't reach and try to help them out. And here we are. Every episode starts with this long intro. Now, I know it's something that not everybody enjoys, and if it's not for you, that's perfectly fine. There are a lot of other shows out there. But for the people who've been with the show for a while, they actually appreciate it, and it's something I want to sort of explain to you. The intro is here for a couple of reasons. First off, I'm assuming not everybody coming to this Sleepy Time Tales is familiar with it, or familiar even in general with sleep podcasts. So I need to explain how to engage with it and what it's for, and I'm part of the way through the process of that now. And also for people who've been with the show for a little while, it's part of the process actually. Because what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create new habits. In a lot of ways, insomnia is a bad habit, much like smoking or biting your fingernails. It's something that you've just developed over time and have struggled to replace. And as anyone who's had a bad habit knows, it's a lot easier to replace one rather than just get rid of one. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a new habit for you as a time to prepare your space and prepare yourself and get ready to sleep. We're building a space here together, somewhere restful that you can curl up in. Now, if you're new to the show and wondering what to do and how to engage with it, as far as I know, there's a couple of possible ways to do so. For me, when I listen to sleep podcasts, I actually need something to listen to. I need a story or something that keeps my mind just a little bit engaged, but not so much and so exciting that I resist sleep when it comes for me. For other people, it might be something a little bit different. Maybe for you, you just need background noise, some kind of white noise, or the sound of rain, or the sound of the ocean, or some dude just droning on a story that's not particularly interesting. But I'm here for you, and I'm here to keep you company, and I'm here to help you to sleep. So however you engage with it, it really is for you. Tonight's story is quite a charming little one, actually. It's called Doodles, the Sunshine Boy by Dowd. It's a charming little story of a sickly young boy with his protective older brother who looks after him and who one day brings him home a bird for company, a raggedy thing that just needs a little bit of TLC, but a beautiful singer, and is the beginning of more adventurous things that follow. Utterly charming little story, and at least it's a little bit of a turn away from the sort of real upper class stuff that for some reason has been popping up to the top lately. So real change from there. But whether the story is the travails of the working class or the upper class or whatever it is, the main most important thing is you can't force your sleep. If you're an insomniac, you've probably been trying to do that. You get into those situations where you're just trying to force yourself to sleep, and let's be real, that's just not going to happen. You need to keep a light mental grip on the story and just allow sleep to come for you. Now, obviously, I'm hopeful that you're asleep before you get to the end of the episode, but it's very important not to feel pressurized. If this is your first night listening to the show, odds are it's probably not going to work for you. I suggest that you give it 2, maybe 3 nights to give it a chance. You kind of maybe got to get over the idea of the strangeness. You may need to get used to my voice or my accent. And for some people, no matter how long they've been listening to the show, 1 may not be long enough. So what I do with my sleep podcast as well is I have a whole bunch downloaded, and I start with the latest one, and then I just let them play all night. Because the odds are pretty good I'm going to wake up at 3 a.m. and not quite realize even that I'm awake until I'm actually really well awake and can't get back to sleep. So what I do is I just let them run, and then when I wake up, if my earbuds have fallen out, I pop them back in and I go back to sleep again. Sometimes even I wake up a little bit before my alarm goes. And in that case, I do pretty much exactly the same thing. I just put my earbuds in, go back to sleep. And as strange as it may sound, and utterly pointless why you would sleep for an extra half an hour when you're going to be getting up anyway, there is just something deeply satisfying about that experience, about allowing yourself complete relaxation right before the alarm. That can be the best part of my night. But however, engage with it, whatever you do with it, the most important thing is that you relax. If you're new to the show and prone to late nights lying staring at the ceiling, this may seem strange to you, so just relax into it and give it a chance. And that's the idea. You relax and you lie in the dark, and while you do that, I'll tell you a tale. So relax, dear listener, my nighttime friend who is elected to lie in the dark, listening to my voice. You will always be safe with me. I'm here to help you relax, to improve your life in a small way, or maybe even not so small. People don't sleep very well these days, and it makes their lives harder. So I'm here to do my small part to help you in a big way. To help you to face tomorrow and the day after, well rested and better able to cope. One thing that's quite central for me here in the Sleepy Time Tales is the concept of kindness. We live in an unkind time, and it's part of the reason we are stressing and concerned and worried. I want to be kind to you. I want to share kindness with you. And most importantly, because this is the hardest part, I need you to be kind to yourself. Don't beat yourself up or rebuke yourself over not sleeping. Don't get tense if you just can't get over the edge of sleep, even with me here in your ears, trying to help. Frustration is one of the great enemies of a good night's sleep. The intention with this podcast is to short-circuit that frustration, to distract the feeling we get when we blame ourselves for not being able to let go and drift into the dark. So take a breath. Forgive the fact that you can't sleep and let my voice wash over you. Take another breath. Imagine the warm darkness rising up, inviting you to sleep and to a better life starting tomorrow. And if you can't let go, forgive yourself and try again tomorrow. If you've had a life of insomnia, sleep is something like an enemy. but it is not your enemy. It's a natural process that we've been pulled away from by stress and life and progress that shines bright lights in our eyes at all hours. I'm here to work with you, to create a safe space, a cocoon in which you can curl up and allow nature to take its course. So if you're still with me, thank you for staying. If you're already asleep, we'll chat again soon. And of course you aren't hearing me, except maybe in a dream. Doodles the Sunshine Boy by Emma C. Dowd. Published 1915 by the Houghton Mifflin Company. Chapter 1. The Bargain. Fragments of the auctioneer's entreaties floated through the open doorway of the bird shop, and above the rattle and roar of the street clacked in Blue's ears. Ladies and gentlemen, beautiful lark, emperor of singers, not swell to look at, but only 20 cents? 22 am I offered? Shame, ladies and gentlemen. And so on in tones of pleading and mild complaint. Blue meanwhile studied the placarded window, where all manner of feathered stock, slightly damaged but every bird a bargain, was announced to be sold to the highest bidder. Lovely starling, ladies and gentlemen, how much? The persuasive voice skipped on, but was rudely interrupted by another. Hunting for bargains? A boy of Blue's own size nudged him in the back. Why don't you go in and get one of them for Doodles? You'd keep him from being down and dumpy. My aunt. Down and dumpy? Doodles? Blue's rallying laugh drowned the ladies and gentlemen's drifting through the doorway. Huh, he chuckled. Guess you don't know Doodles. Ain't he now? Supposed all sick folks was. My aunt, she. Doodles, dumpy. The boy's shoulders shook again. Why, if there was nothing left in the whole world but just bobber's poles, Doodles, you'd be sure would making friends with the stripes. And you'd have the best time ever. Bet you he would. Blue's hard little face grew suddenly tender as he thought of the brother whose life was all pain and all joy. The auction was over. The crowd poured out into the noisy street. Here and there a birdcage told that a lame canary, a blind bobolink, or some other dabbaged fluff of feathers had changed owners. One of the purchasers, a small hatless girl, clad in scowls and a lace-collared hat, halted when she saw Blue, and began recklessly to swing her cage. Here you, ma'am Sweeney, the boy cried, seizing the child's arm. Don't you see you're scaring that bird most to death? Let go, she snapped. Tain't yours. She wrenched herself free and defiantly thrashed the cage about her knees. Stop it. The girl found her hand gripped in a vice of muscles. Let me be, she screamed. Don't care if I do scare him, horrid old thing. A little group of newsboys circled about them, eager for a closer view of the cause of the wrangle. The ragged grey bird, panting on the floor of his prison, did not invite favour. There was a subdued chorus of grunts and ejaculations. Then disapproval burst into bantering speech. Ain't you, dude? Ma'am, what do you pay for this beaut? When he'll give a concert? Sure, if he sings like he looks, he'll be the show. How could I see him in all that jam, she pouted. The man said he was swell and could sing like everything. Anyhow, I got him for 17 cents. Swell, Blue let go a whistle. Yet he gazed pityingly at the poor, bedraggled thing in the cage. You could not to know nothing about him while he's got frayeds, apologized Joseph Sitsnitsky. He be an awfully stylish kind. Joseph's uncle was half proprietor of the bird shop. As if encouraged by this friendly comment, the bird tentatively cast an eye upward and then hopped to his perch. But if it hoped by this act to win kindlier words, the effort failed. Scorn swept the circle. The bargain was disgracefully dirty. His left wing hung limp at his side, his bill was nicked, and his tail was reduced to 3 ragged feathers. He's worse than a muddy sparrow. Out him, on, and done with it. You could have nice feelings over him, and maybe sometime he sings, mildly remonstrated the loyal nephew of Abraham Sitniski. But nobody heeded the plaintive voice, and the girl, chagrined at the loss of her money and exasperated by the jeers of the boys, seemed about to follow Pete's dismal advice, when Blue Stickney interposed. "I'll give you a quarter for him." Staying her reckless hand, Mame stared. "Honest?" she scowled. The boy was already counting out the sum from his meager handful of small coins, and in a moment the grey bird had again changed owners. As Blue started up the steep stairs to the top floor of the Flatiron, he wished it had been possible to give his purchase a bath before revealing it to the keen eyes of Doodles. But then the little brother would have had just so much of a happy ministration for his pet. For of course the bird would belong to Doodles. There'd never been any other thought of it in Blue's mind. Down the dim stairway floated a strain of melody, and it told the boy agreeable news. That his mother had come home and was getting dinner, that things had gone well at the big shop where she worked, and that the little brother was not suffering from the bad spell which had threatened in the morning. Mrs. Stickney rarely sang when Doodles was in unusual pain, and if she did, it was not in so brisk a voice. The song grew clearer and the words came distinctly now. Jerusalem the golden, with money and honey blessed, beneath thy contemplation sing heart and voice oppressed. I know not, oh, I know not, what holy joys are there, what radiancy of glory, what light beyond compare. They stand those halls of Zion, all jubilation. Blue opened the kitchen door, and as he stepped from the dusky hallway to the sunlit room, a sudden mellow trill struck into song. This tuneful greeting quite caught away the boy's remembrance of the little speech of presentation which he had thought to amuse his brother, and Doodles, his eyes big with wonder and delight, stretched out both hands towards the unkempt singer. "Oh, is he ours?" he cried. Blue nodded. "To keep forever?" Another nod. "Isn't he a darling?" breathed the little occupant of the pillowed chair, and when the bitted cage was placed beside him, he threw one arm around the small prison and leaned lovingly over it. The bird cocked an eye upward and ventured another trill. "He's just beautiful," piped Doodles in ecstasy. After that, who could dare to make unflattering remarks about the singer? Certainly not Doodles' mother, so with a happy light on her face, she continued her work of preparing dinner. In the Flatiron, news flew fast. Even before Mrs. Stickney's potatoes had fried brown, up the stairs puffed Granny O'Donnell on her rheumatic old legs, bringing the deserted home of her long mourned-for Canary Dick, who had flown away from Cherry Street 6 years ago. With a joyful whiff, the bargain took possession of his roomier quarters, and despite his drooping wing, pranced about on the perches. "See how happy he is," laughed Doodles, clapping his little thin hands. "He is saying thank you." Then perhaps because his new master had suggested the returning of thanks, the slim grey bird, with a little captivating prelude, broke into a torrent of melody such as Canary Dick, with his limited powers, had never dreamed of. "Sure, and he must have come straight from heaven," gasped Granny O'Donnell, as the last note dropped into silence. Blue stood, big-eyed, in the pantry doorway, arrested in his hunt for a suitable bathtub for the singer. The mother quite forgot her scorching potatoes, and Doodles himself, with both arms around the cage, crooned words of endearment in the ears of the little songster. Granny O'Donnell's astonishing reports of Blue's 25-cent purchase spread through the big tenement house, until old and young tripped or hobbled up to the top floor to see the surprising handful of feathers that could sing like a blessed angel. A long bath and a still longer toilet in the sun brought the ragged bargain to something like sleekness, and he began the promise of making good his little master's first praise. On rainy days when shut-in neighbors were apt to be neighborly and numerous, the grey bird sometimes sulked on the end of his perch and refused to sing. possibly too strongly reminded of his dismal surroundings in the bird shop. But as soon as the sunshine returned, he would promptly forget the past and graciously display his wonderful gift to all that came. Chapter 2. Caruso. A weighty problem was puzzling the Stickney family. What should be the grey bird's name? Doodles was growing nervous under the reiterated question. What you going to call him? Every visitor had a name to offer. But the matter was not of easy disposal. I know Miss Homan thinks I ought to call him Cherry, observed the little owner plaintively. But how can I? He isn't one. And there's Granny. Do you suppose she'll feel awful bad if I don't call him Dickie? If it wasn't for Dickie Fit, but 'tis. And his mother calling and calling him all day long. How'd anybody know what she meant? Huh, snorted Blue. Guess we shan't name him after that kid. Not much. And now Miss George, Doodles resumed. I'm afraid she's mad. She was in here with the baby this afternoon, and she tried to make me promise to call him Evangeline after her. I kept telling her it wasn't a girl, but she didn't seem to think that made any difference. I suppose it's a pretty name, but you wouldn't want it, would you, for him? The tone was anxious. Gracious no was the emphatic answer. Name him after that, George Squalor? Blue chuckled with the thought. Doodles laughed a little in sympathy and surveyed his brother with admiration. Blue was always so satisfying. At breakfast the next morning, the important question was again taken up. Dear me, complained the mother. I hope that bird will get a name pretty soon. We can't seem to talk of anything else. Blue laughed confidently. He'll have one before night, sure. I'm going to think of something fine today. Going something, repeated Mrs. Stickney with a patient sigh. What would your grandfather say to hear that, with him keeping the district school for 2 years before he was married? I tell you, we children had to stand around, no cutting words short where he was. Glad I wasn't there, grinned Blue. You'd have been a good deal better off than you are now, his mother asserted. If I didn't have to work in the shop, I believe I'd keep you home from school and teach you myself till you could talk decently. You ought to hear the other boys, laughed Blue. And that's what's the trouble. Doodles is catching it from you and doesn't speak as nearly as well as he used to. I wish you had better companions. She drew a long, regretful breath. Well, do try, both of you, to remember your INGs. Oh, what diff doesn't make, returned Blue easily. Child, diff? There's the whistle. Correct speech was quite forgotten as Mrs. Stickney hurried off to the big silver shop, leaving the boys to finish their breakfast in leisure. They did not at once go back to the question they had been discussing, but while the elder brother was washing the dishes, Doodles started it again. What made you be so sure Birdie'd have a name by night? The small boy queried. Oh, I do know, Blue smiled, pausing to pour a dipper of hot water over the soapy cups and plates. Seems sometimes as if he never would, Doodles put in with a wee sigh. Oh, I haven't even half tried yet, resumed the other. Don't you worry one mite, old fella. There's lots of dandy names, if I could only think of 'em, and I'm going to do my honor best today, sure. Doodles laughed softly to accompany his brother's louder chuckle, and rested in the promise, for, as he had reason to know, Blue's honor best was apt to be very good indeed. And when he was left alone, he and the grey bird had a long confidential talk. It was satisfactory too, for although words were only on one side, Doodles would have told you that the bird surely understood all that was said to him. Didn't he cock his little head and make soft musical replies? And when he was assured that he would soon have a name of his very own, just like the other folks, didn't he actually dash off a brand new song that left his hearer gasping with delight? Yet it was not Blue that first arrived with the name. Some of the top-floor lodgers had to pass the door of the Stickney kitchen on their way up and down stairs. Among them was a recent comer to whom Doodles had taken a strong liking. A young girl, small, red-cheeked and curly-haired, had smiled a prompt answer to his first friendly hello. The next day she had stepped inside to give him a flower from the little bunch she carried, and then had lingered a moment to hear the grey bird sing. The boy had quickly learned her step because of a slight lameness, and he came to watch for her as soon as the noon whistles blew, and was disappointed when she went elsewhere for dinner. He felt that he had a kind of fellowship on her on account of her defect, and he longed to really know her. Today he was listening for her halting footfall even before she had time to reach the flat iron. He had not learned where she worked, but he conjectured that it must either be at the knitting mill or the box factory. His mother was a full 10 minutes in walking down from the silver shop, and the girl usually reached home at least 5 minutes earlier. If she couldn't come home at all this noon, he wanted to tell her that his pet was really going to have a name, for hadn't Blue said so? There she was now. Nearer and nearer drew the uneven steps. Doodles waited excitedly for the first glimpse of a dark blue dress. "Hello," he called. "Please, will you?" She was coming even before the invitation was given. "What is it, little sweetheart?" Dimples were playing around the ruddy lips. "I wanted to tell you that my bird is going to have a name. Today." "Of course he is. I've brought it." "You?" "Yes, I found it right on the street." "Oh, how? What?" Doodles bent forward in eagerness. "I saw it on the billboards down by the theatre. It's the name of the great singer, Caruso." The child brought his little hands together with a soft breath of delight. "Isn't that beautiful? Caruso. I've been wishing it would sound like music, and it does." "I thought you'd like it," she nodded. "It is lovely. Won't Blue be glad? Oh, birdie dear, you've got a name. You've got a name." Leaning over the cage, which stood always within his reach. "Caruso. Caruso. Do you like it, dear?" The grey bird stopped pruning his feathers, glanced archly at his little master, and with a few joyous whistles broke into one of his most captivating songs. "He is a wonderful singer," praised the girl, "and I've been wishing I could go to hear Caruso. I'll have to come and hear this one instead." "Yes, do come any time," urged Doodles. "But why don't you go and hear the other if you want to?" The girl laughed. "It costs money, sweetheart." Her blue eyes grew wistful. "Everything nice costs money." She turned to go. "I'm ever and ever so much obliged to you for the name," Doodles hastened to say. "I don't know yours," he suggested. She had come back and was looking down at him, a half smile on her pretty lips. "No, you don't, do you?" she replied gaily. "It is Dorothy." A shadow passed over the bright face. "Rose." "What a pretty name," chirped Doodles. "I'm so glad you told me." "You can call me Dolly if you like. Some folks do. Grandpa always does." "Did," she corrected. "Oh, I'd love to," began the child, but the girl was already in the hall and she did not look back. At the instant, Blue dashed up the stairs with a clatter. "Oh, I've got the dandiest name for you," he burst out. "Oh," cried Doodles. "You could never guess," grinned his brother. "Caruso," piped the small boy with sudden intuition. "How in the world?" Blue's face fell in amazement. Doodles clapped his hands gleefully. "You thought I couldn't guess, and he's got it already." Blue laughed in sheer sympathy with his brother's joy. "But how?" he queried. "Dolly brought it. She," pointing towards the girl's door, "Dolly Rose." Mrs. Stickney came in just in time to hear the story of the new name, and the dinner hour was full of unusual chatter and mirth. Chapter 3. The Robbery on the Top Floor. After his mother had returned to the factory and his brother to school, Doodles found himself somewhat weary from the small excitement, and shortly he fell asleep. The kitchen was very still. Stairway and hall were empty. The occupants of the top floor worked outside and would not be home until 6 o'clock. Only dull sounds came from the stories below. Even Caruso drowsed on his perch. Moments, hours were ticked off by the little brown clock on the shelf, yet Doodles did not awake. At last somebody crept stealthily up the steep stairs. A girl in a lace-collared coat peered around the corner of the doorway, and as she saw the sleeping boy, her beady eyes gleamed with triumph. Noiselessly, she crossed the room and reached out a hand to snatch the birdcage. But a quick movement roused the little prisoner, and he began to flutter wildly. For an instant the girl hesitated, glancing at Doodles, and the lad came to himself with a sharp cry. Quickly realizing that his pet was in danger, he grasped the cage as she seized it. Clinging to it manfully, but with brutal force, she wrested his frail fingers from their hold, and put herself and her booty beyond his reach. "I'll learn ya," she snarled. "It's my bird, 'tain't yours. There's your old money." She flung a quarter on the table. It rolled away and off to the floor, but she did not stop to pick it up. "Blue Stick knew I was only in fun when I let him take it, and he ought to brought it right back. Everybody says so. You can tell him he needn't sneak around trying to get the bird again, for he can't have it." She was disappearing in the doorway before the dazed boy burst into speech. Come back," he shrieked. "It's mine, bring it back, or bring it back." But his only answer was a little flouting laugh and the mad whir of wings against the wires. "Oh, Birdie, Birdie," piteously called the child, the familiar name coming to his lips in place of the new one. And as the fleeting footsteps on the stairs were lost, he dropped back among his pillows with a great sob. "Dear Birdie," he moaned, "my precious Birdie." In that moment, despair seized his soul. If only he could have pursued to save his pet. But his feet had forgotten how to walk, and all at once realizing his utter helplessness, he put his hands to his face and shed the first bitter tears of his joyous life. Then, with a suddenness that caught away his breath, came the pain. The ugly pain which for weeks had held itself so far off he had almost forgotten how cruel it could be, and now he groaned with the torture of it. So his brother found him, white and sobbing. "What's up, Kitty?" Blue knelt beside him and took the cold little hands in his own. "Tell me, old fella, is it the big pain?" The child nodded. For a moment he could do no more. Anguish held the words back. "Birdie's gone," he finally sobbed out. "Gone?" Blue stared around. "Where is he?" "She took him. The girl." "The girl? That dolly?" No, a little girl. She left some money there." He pointed feebly in the direction of the coin. A fierce light flamed in Blue's puzzled face. "Did she have on a big lace collar?" "Yes." "Mon Sweeney, confounded little cuss." Doodles gazed at him with horrified eyes. "Don't care. She is making you feel like this. Tell me about it, Kitty. Or no, I'll get some medicine first." Blue was accustomed to these sudden attacks and brought a glass of the remedy which was always at hand. Bit by bit he gained the story, and he was swift at a decision. "I'll go straight down there and get the bird." "She won't let you have it," wailed Doodles. "She said so." "Just a bluff, old fella. Suppose I'm going to let Mon Sweeney down me? Not much." "If only I'd been like you," warned the child. "And Caruso won't know why I didn't jump up and run after him. I guess his heart is most broke thinking I don't care." "No, it ain't," declared Blue. "Anyway, you can tell him all about it when he comes." Doodles was gasping in another agonizing spasm, and the elder boy sprang to his side with words of courage and cheer. Presently the pain passed, and the brave little sufferer again smiled. "That one was pretty hard," he said weakly, as his brother brought a second dose of the soothing medicine. "Guess this'll squelch it. Don't believe it'll come again." Blue set down the empty glass and looked at the clock. In 10 minutes the evening papers would be due. He ought to go after the bird at once, but how could he leave Doodles? He thought fast. Should you mind my going now, Kitty, if Granny will come up and stay with you? I've got to go deliver my papers, and I want to make sure of Caruso first. You'll bring him home? Sure. All right. I don't mind being alone, much. I'd rather you go get Caruso. I'll feel better. Granny needn't come. Guess I'll ask her, Blue insisted, and he bade his brother a cheery goodbye. Yet as he ran down the stairs, his face darkened and he shut his lips tight. He was thinking of his errand around the corner. You don't say, exclaimed the old Irish woman when the boy told her briefly of the robbery and Doodle's consequent illness. Seems if I'd heard her, bold little serpent, gone right by me there with an angel bird. Of course I'll stay with the blessed child. Dear Granny O'Donnell, from Christmas Day to Christmas Day she was at her neighbour's disposal with her capable hands, her quick brain, and her rheumatic old legs. Whether it was mumps or pneumonia, an ailing kitten or a new baby, a drunken husband or a dying child, whatever the need, Granny was always ready. Even now, before Blue was well out on the street, she was limping up the stairs to Doodles. Just below this flat iron stood Joseph Sitniski. Hello, hailed Blue. You're the man I want. Joseph smiled good-naturedly. Say, Blue went on, in a confidential tone. I've got some business on hand that can't wait and is most time for the paper to come out. Would you mind running down the current offices and getting mine? I'll give you the money, he drawing out a small handful from his pocket. I will go, agreed Joseph solemnly. Will I to bring them here? Oh no, cried Blue. Just leave him at the office and say I'll call for him. I'll be no end obliged. All right, assented the other and trotted away. You could always trust Joseph, and Blue at once centered his thoughts on the disagreeable duty at hand. What if they should see him coming and shouldn't let him in? What if Mamie's big brother were at home? What if... But sure, there was no need of what-ifing in this way. It was going to be an easy job. All he had to do was walk in quietly, grab the bird, and run. Once he had the cage in his hands, there'd be nothing to fear. No Sweeney could beat him in a race. And if there should be any real opposition, wasn't he in good fighting order? Didn't he whip a fellow of 15 this very morning for teasing a little club-footed boy? Recollecting that pleasant affair made him feel equal to any possible contest with Sweeney's big or little. Up in the hallway of the new brick block, he looked around questioningly. Then he risked the first bell at his right. A small girl opened the door. Does Mamie Sweeney live here? He asked in a soft tone. The child pointed directly across the hall, and thanking her, Blue walked over and pushed the button indicated. Mamie herself answered the summons, but with her first glimpse of the caller, she attempted to shut the door. Blue, however, was ready, and throwing himself against it, pushed it into the room. The girl, glowering, darted to the opposite side of the apartment. That's your manners, is it? She jeered. You needn't think you're going to get that bird again. No, indeed, broke in Mr. Sweeney, if you hadn't the cheek. Keeping Mamie bird all this time, and think coming after it. Out with you, we don't want you around. The boy threw back his head defiantly, and pulled a quarter from his pocket. That's your money, he cried, laying it on the table. But the bird's mine. I bought it fair and square. Mamie was mighty glad to get it off her hands then, and now just because you've heard that it sings, you want it back. Yes, we want it, and we've got it, and when you see it again, just pass me in the word. Now leave, will you? I can have you arrested, Dead Blue, growing furious. I will too if you don't bring out that bird. You stole it. I'll have you arrested, sure as. Arrested, is it? That's a good one. Arrested, she laughed shrilly. The boy's face darkened with passion. If she had been a man, he would have sprung like a tiger. But a woman? He clenched his fists fiercely and held himself straight. Now here you go, you little... No. Not without my bird, blazed the boy. A sinister light flashed in the woman's eyes. Mamie dear, she bade in oily tones, fetch the bird. Fetch the bird. The girl stared at her mother an instant and then started towards the closed door. Blue turned and his gaze followed her eagerly. In a moment it was over. The boy never knew just how it was done, but he had been caught in the back and his arms close pinioned, had been lifted and hurled into the hallway. As he sprang to his feet, the lock clicked in the door and there was coarse laughter. Realizing the trick, he set his teeth in helpless fury. I'll make you pay for this, he shouted. Then he shot down the stairs to the street. On the sidewalk, passing the entrance, marched a big policeman. Blue's face lighted in glad recognition. Mr. Fitzpatrick, he called. Oh, Mr. Fitzpatrick. The tall man turned and smiled cordially. Hello, Blue, what's up? For the boy's face showed unusual excitement. The story was jerkily told, but Thomas Fitzpatrick, with the aid of an occasional quiet question, soon had possession of the principal facts. Will you go right up and arrest him? The voice was eager. They were walking slowly in the direction of the city hall, and the officer glanced up at the clock in the tower. Can't leave my beat now, he answered. I shall be off duty in half an hour, then we'll attest to the case. And you'll arrest him, won't you? Blue insisted. A little smile flickered on Thomas Fitzpatrick's broad face. Don't think it'll be necessary, he said in a confident tone. We'll get the bird. But they won't let you have it, the boy hastened to assure him. You wait and see, laughed the officer. You wait and see. How's the kid coming on? This has done him all up. I found him in one of his dreadful turns when I came home from school. He thinks that bird is it, for sure. The big man grew grave. A shame, he muttered, with a slow shake of his head. Poor little kid, but we'll have him smiling again before long. You tell him Tom Fitzpatrick will get his bird for him and not to worry another mite. I'll meet you here in half an hour and we'll fix him. Blue bounded away to the top floor of the Flatiron and found Doodles deep into Granny's story of her girlhood days in one of old Ireland's famous castles. Nothing short of Caruso himself could have brought the small boy so much joy as the message of his adored Thomas Fitzpatrick. For ever since the afternoon of the Flatiron fire, when Doodles was alone in the fourth floor, and the gallant young Irishman, then a fireman, had bounded up the burning stairs through the thick smoke and carried the helpless child down to fresh air and safety, the name of Fitzpatrick had been an honored one in the Stickney family. Blue's paper route was raced over. Although he was late in starting, the last house was reached on time. He was in front of the Tobin block a whole minute ahead of Fitzpatrick. The two mounted the stairs in silence. Mrs. Sweeney herself answered the ring. The door was opened a mere crack, and her head appeared beyond it. What you want? She asked in her surly voice. The officer touched his cap. I wish to see Mrs. Sweeney. That's me name, what you want? Perhaps we can talk better inside, he suggested. But the crack was not widened, and with a little tolerant smile, he went on. I've come to get a bird that belongs to this young gentleman's brother, with a sidelong nod towards Blue. It's our bird, she snapped. T'ain't theirs. He teased Mammy out of it to be pretending it weren't no good, and so she, a little girl, let him take it. Look at the cheek of him, when it's not his at all, keeping it till Mamie had to go and fetch it home. Madam, said the boy quietly, there's no use putting up a bluff. I understand the case from the beginning to end. Blue Stickney bought the bird of your girl. It was a right up and down sale and she has no claim on it. If you'll hand it over at once, you'll save yourself some trouble. I guess not much, she bristled. Our own bird, he's lied to you. Mrs. Sweeney, a heavy hand was laid on the door. I've no time to waste in talk. I will thank you to bring me that bird, or I shall be obliged to take unpleasant measures. The woman hesitated, muttering, I guess I may as well let you have it. She at last wavered aloud, though it's ours. Homely old thing, she went on scornfully. Mamie was a fool for buying it. She still stood there, behind the crack, sullen, unwilling to yield. Thomas Fitzpatrick was patient, but his supper hour was going. I suppose you know that the penalty for resisting an officer of the law, he finally insinuated. She darted away and the man swung the door wide, stepping to the sill. His big form nearly filled the open space, and Blue shifted about for a view of the apartment beyond. When the cage was actually in the boy's hand, his heart bounded with joy. When the cage was actually in the boy's hand, his heart bounded with joy. His faith in Tom Fitzpatrick had been all but overbalanced by Mrs. Sweeney's determination to keep the bird, and he had doubted ever seeing Caruso again. Her duty performed, the woman grew bold. "You can take it," she patronized, "if it will pacify you. But Sweeney'll probably bring suit. He ain't one to stand no humbuggin', Sweeney ain't." "You can, of course, do as you choose," replied the officer, "but I should advise you to drop the matter. You see, the law's all on our side. There ain't enough on your side of the fence for you to get a big toe on, let alone a whole foot. Good day, ma'am." Down on the sidewalk, Fitzpatrick cast a look into the cage. Caruso, huddled up on his lowest perch, was a forlorn bunch of feathers. "What kind of bird is it?" "Don't know what he is. No one seems to know." "Looks some like a mockingbird." "That's what Dolly Rose said," agreed Blue. "What ails his wing? Broke?" "I don't know. It's always been bad, but it hangs down worse than ever." The boy scowled anxiously at it, thinking of Doodles. "You ought to have it fixed," counseled the big man. "I know who can do it for you. That's Sandy Gillespie. If there's anything about birds that he don't know, it ain't worth knowing. Why, he's got a house full of 'em, all kinds. He had more than 50 one time. He could tell you quick as wink what this one is." "I'd take it up there if I was you. He lives away out on Temple Hill Road. You know where the old Hayward place is?" Blue nodded. "Well, he lives just a little beyond there. A big old-fashioned house with a piazza on the side." "How much will he charge?" ventured the boy. "Oh, that'll be all right. You just tell him Tom Fitzpatrick sent you. I declare, I wish I could go with you. Sandy Gillespie is a mighty nice man, good as they make 'em." They'd reached the Flatiron, and Blue expressed his thanks in no uncertain way. "I was awful afraid she wasn't going to let you have it," he confessed. The officer laughed. "I wasn't a bit," he said. "I took a little more time than I might have with some folks, but I didn't want to row. It's better to get along quietly when you can. Now you take that bird up to Sandy tomorrow, and tell the kid I'm coming in to call on him someday. Good night." At sight of Caruso, Doodles held up both arms with a little cry. His brother set the cage on his knees, and the bird sprang up to the top perch to cuddle against his master's soft cheek. Doodles and Caruso went to sleep that night, side by side. "I want him right where I can put my hand on the cage when I wake up," said the boy. "Then I shall know his coming back wasn't a dream." Chapter 4. Doodles turns matchmaker. It rained, but no merry, independent little drops tinkled upon the panes. Mother Nature appeared to be house-cleaning, and torrents of water were dashed against the windows. Doodles watched the work outside while Caruso plumed his feathers. When the long toilet was completed, the bird and the boy were ready for a chat. Happy crooning talk on the one side, soft tuneful notes on the other. Footfalls were on the stairs. Somebody was coming up with light running steps. "Sounds like Mr. Gaylord," Doodles told Caruso. Presently a young man appeared, his trim suit of dark cheviot corresponding with the bright smiling face which he turned towards the Stickney kitchen. "Hello, Doodles." The blithe voice was enough to make one forget such things as cloudy skies and autumn house cleaning. "Hello," the boy responded joyfully. "Take the rocking chair, Mr. Gaylord, do." "I had a little time before dinner and thought I'd run up and hear your bird. You know he's never sung to me yet." "Maybe he won't now," returned Doodles anxiously. "He doesn't like rainy days, and then he gets so scared yesterday." A query brought out the account of the afternoon's excitement, for the boy was still brimful of it. The visitor was a sympathetic listener, and the story as told by Doodles was worth hearing. "So you found a name for him," remarked the young man presently, after they'd used up all the praiseful adjectives for Thomas Fitzpatrick. Yes, Dolly Rose did it, cried Doodles gleefully. That is, she thought of it first, and then Blue came with it too. Wasn't that funny? Do you know Dolly Rose? I think not. Who is she? Why, she lives right next door to you, exclaimed Doodles. She's just as pretty. She's got red cheeks and lovely blue eyes, exactly like the sky, and the cunningest little curls in her hair. Haven't you ever seen her? Yes, I guess I have, from the description, but I didn't know her name. You'd like her. She's so sweet. She brought me some flowers one day and a peach another time, and she has the dearest little dimples where she smiles. I always want to kiss them. Don't you like dimples? I guess so, laughed Mr. Gaylord. They always remind me. But his thought was interrupted, for Caruso, with a few bewitching quirks and trolls, burst into one of his enchanting songs. Bravo, cried the visitor as the music ceased. The bird had stopped as suddenly as he had begun and was now lunching on a bit of cracker. He is a worthy namesake of the great tenor. Doodles, bending over the cage, whispered his thanks to the little singer, while the young man surveyed them with tender eyes. I'm going to hear the other Caruso next Wednesday night, he said presently. And that makes me think, I ought to be picking out my seat. They went on sale this morning. The boy's eyes shone. To hear him sing, won't that be splendid? Dolly Rose wants to go awfully. Oh, I wonder, he broke off, gazing at the other in hesitation, yet with the brightest of new thought in his face. Have you plenty of money? He ventured. It depends on how much you call plenty, the young man smiled. I shan't be a millionaire this year, but what is it you wish? Fruit, or candy, or some toy? Say on, I'll risk it. Doodle stared an instant, then his delicate face lightened. Oh no, nothing for me. I've got what I want. The visitor looked at him, the hint of a smile on the boyish lips. You are fortunate, he said. The child did not notice. I was only thinking, he went on, how nice it would be, unless it cost too much, if you... She wants to hear him so bad. If you could take Dolly Rose to the concert with you. Mr. Gaylord laughed out, and Doodles chuckled in sympathy. Will you? He urged. The young man shook his head. I'm afraid Miss Dolly wouldn't care to go with a fellow she doesn't know well enough to bow to. Oh yes, she would. I know she would. I can introduce you to her. She'll be here now in a little while. Oh, won't it be lovely? The words tumbled over each other as Doodles brought his hands together in ecstasy. Mr. Gaylord, a deeper tinge of red on his sun-browned face, leaned back in Mrs. Stickney's old rocker while his shoulders shook silently and his grey eyes twinkled. Doodles beamed on him. Aren't you glad I thought of it, and won't she be pleased? I'm not certain, the other began, but was stopped by a shh. She's coming, whispered Doodles. The two waited, the boy eager, the man amused. Oh, Dolly, please come in. I want to speak to you. Hello. Doodles was joyfully excited. Inside the doorway she halted, spying the stranger. You needn't be afraid of him, the boy cried, stretching out his hand to her. She stepped forward and held it close in both her own. It's Mr. Gaylord, Doodles hastened to explain. He's chauffeur for Mrs. Graham, that rich lady that lives over on Douglas Street. I've been telling him about you. This is Miss Dolly Rose, Mr. Gaylord. The young man offered his rocker, which the girl gently declined, insisting that she had no time to sit down. Just a minute, pleaded Doodles. I want to tell you something right away. You'll be so glad. Mr. Gaylord is going to hear the real Caruso next week, and he's going to take you. Isn't that beautiful? Sparks of fun twinkled in the man's eyes, but they vanished when he glanced at the face opposite. It was flashing with indignation. No dimples played about the clear-cut lips. He anticipated her words. Doodles is taking things a little for granted, he said, with gentle deference. I should certainly consider it a privilege and an honor to be allowed to escort you to the Opera House Wednesday evening, but let me say frankly that such a thought could scarcely have occurred to me, except for our young friend's suggestion, inasmuch as I hardly know you by sight and have never heard your name. The girl unbent a bit as the comicality of the situation pushed itself forward. Even then, he went on, I was not bold enough to expect that Doodles' wish would come true. But now that it had been properly introduced, I will say that I should honestly be very glad if you would go with me. It would add a great deal to the pleasure of my evening. Evidently, the girl's inclination and judgment were in struggle, and the latter was getting the other in hand. "I thank you, Mr. Gaylord," she answered, a little hesitantly. "Indeed I do, but really I don't think I can go." "Oh, why not?" broke in Doodles. "You said you wanted to." The girl trembled on the verge of a smile, and suddenly was in a merry laugh. "You will go, won't you?" coaxed the boy, delighted at the pleasant turn things had taken. Perhaps she yielded, and then darted away. And that's it for tonight. If you're interested in learning more about Doodles the Sunshine Boy, you can find the book on Project Gutenberg at the link in the show notes. Thanks again for joining me on this episode of Sleepytime Tales, the podcast designed around a bedtime story to help you to get a restful night. New episodes will be released every Sunday night to give you something fresh to help you rest in a new week. But make sure to subscribe in whatever service you use so that you get your new episodes whenever they come out. A reminder that the music for tonight is Unten Desire by Kumiko. Check out more of their work on their website, which you'll find linked in the show notes. Good night, and sweet dreams.